The cold October wind swept through the rugged streets of Bismarck, Dakota Territory. 1883. As Genevieve Keller clutched the swaddled infant tighter against her chest, her heart pounding with each step toward the unknown. The baby, not her own by birth but hers by circumstance, whimpered softly as she descended from the stagecoach, her legs stiff from the grueling 2-week journey from Philadelphia. Last stop, Bismarck. The driver called, tossing her modest carpet bag onto the muddy street before turning his attention to the other passengers. Genevieve drew in a ragged breath, scanning the bustling thoroughfare for the man she'd agreed to marry, a stranger named Thomas Fletcher, who had placed an advertisement seeking a bride to help manage his dry goods store. The baby in her arms wasn't part of their arrangement, but after finding the abandoned infant on the steps of her boarding house just days before her departure, Genevieve couldn't leave the child to an uncertain fate. "Miss Keller," a deep voice called from behind her. She turned, expecting to see Thomas Fletcher, but instead faced a tall man with sun-weathered skin, piercing blue eyes and broad shoulders beneath a dust-covered denim jacket. He removed his Stetson, revealing tousled dark blonde hair as he studied her face, then the bundle in her arms. "I'm Owen Ryder," he said, his expression grim. "I'm afraid I have difficult news. Thomas Fletcher passed 3 days ago. Influenza took him quick." His eyes dropped to the infant. "And I wasn't informed you'd be bringing company." Genevieve felt the ground shift beneath her feet. No husband. No security, just her, a baby no one wanted, and a vast, unforgiving territory with winter fast approaching. I don't understand," she stammered. "His last letter arrived just before I departed." Owen's jaw tightened as he glanced at the curious onlookers gathering around them. "Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private. I was Thomas's business partner. I came to meet you as a courtesy." "What am I to do now?" Genevieve whispered, more to herself than to him. The baby began to fuss, tiny fists punching at the air. Owen's eyes softened as he watched Genevieve gently rock the infant, her own tears threatening to spill. "There's a hotel down the street where you can rest tonight," Owen said, reaching for her carpet bag. "Tomorrow we'll see about arranging your return east." "Return?" Genevieve shook her head firmly. "I sold everything to come here. I have nowhere to go back to." Owen studied her face, noting her determined expression despite the fear in her eyes, then his gaze shifted to the baby. "The child, it's not yours, not by birth," she admitted quietly. "I found her abandoned. The authorities couldn't locate her mother, and the orphanage was not a place any child should be. I couldn't leave her behind." For several long moments, Owen was silent, his expression unreadable as the Dakota wind whipped around them, carrying the scents of pine, horse, and coming snow. Finally, he cleared his throat. "I need help at my ranch outside of town," he said, the words seemingly surprising even him. "Winter's coming and I lost my housekeeper last month. I could use someone to cook, keep things in order." He hesitated, then gestured toward the infant. "Claim them both. That's what my father would have said. A baby needs a home and you need work." Genevieve blinked in surprise. "You'd hire me?" "Even with a baby, it's honest work, Miss Keller. The ranch is 15 miles out, isolated but safe. You'd have your own quarters in the main house." His eyes met hers, direct and unflinching. "I'm offering employment, not marriage, just so we're clear." The baby's cries grew louder, drawing curious stares from passers-by. Genevieve bounced her gently, considering her limited options. A position as a housekeeper wasn't what she'd traveled west for, but it was shelter, safety, and a chance to care for the child she'd come to love. "I accept your offer, Mr. Ryder," she said, straightening her back. "And her name is Hope." Owen nodded once, then gestured toward a wagon parked near the general store. "We should get moving then. Storm's brewing and we've got a long ride ahead." As they made their way to the wagon, Genevieve wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. But when Hope's tiny hand curled around her finger, she knew that whatever hardships lay ahead, they would face them together. The journey to Owen Ryder's ranch was marked by silence broken only by the creaking of wagon wheels and Hope's occasional whimpers. Genevieve tried to soothe the infant while taking in the vast, open landscape so different from Philadelphia's crowded streets. Rolling plains stretched toward distant mountains, the tall prairie grass rippling like a golden sea beneath the darkening sky. "How old is she?" Owen asked suddenly, his eyes fixed on the trail ahead. "The doctor who examined her believed about 3 months," Genevieve answered, adjusting the blanket around Hope's face to shield her from the wind. She was left with nothing, no note, no name, just wrapped in a threadbare blanket on the boarding house steps. Owen's hands tightened on the reins. "And you just took her?" "Not immediately." Genevieve's voice softened with the memory. "The authorities searched for her mother for days. When they couldn't find her, they were going to send Hope to the city orphanage. I'd seen those places, Mr. Ryder. Children wasting away from neglect, disease running rampant." She looked down at Hope's sleeping face. "I was already leaving for Dakota. It seemed providential." "Providential," Owen echoed, a hint of bitterness in his tone. "Not a word I'd use much these days." They crested a hill, and Owen pointed toward a cluster of buildings nestled in a protected valley. "Ryder Ranch. Been in my family for 15 years. My father brought us out here when I was 12. As they drew closer, Genevieve could make out a substantial 2-story house built of sturdy logs, a large barn, bunkhouse, and several outbuildings. Cattle dotted the distant pastures, and smoke curled from the main house chimney. "It's larger than I expected," she admitted. "We run 2,000 head of cattle and employ 8 ranch hands. They bunk separately," Owen explained, guiding the horses toward the house. "You'll be responsible for cooking, cleaning the main house, laundry, and garden tending come spring." His eyes flicked to Hope. "The baby complicates things." "She won't interfere with my duties," Genevieve assured him quickly. "She's a good baby, and I'm used to working with her nearby." Owen didn't look convinced but nodded as he halted the wagon. "Miguel," he called out. A middle-aged Mexican man emerged from the barn, smiling broadly as he approached. "Señor Owen, you return early." "Miguel Vasquez, my foreman," Owen introduced. "Miguel, this is Miss Genevieve Keller. She'll be taking over as housekeeper." He hesitated before adding, "And this is Hope." Miguel's weathered face broke into a warm smile when he saw the baby. "Ah, a little one. My wife Sofia will be pleased. She misses our grandchildren." "Sofia Vasquez has been keeping house since Mrs. Peterson left," Owen explained. "She'll show you your duties." As if summoned by her name, a plump woman with silver-streaked black hair hurried from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. Her dark eyes widened at the sight of Genevieve and the baby. "You bring a mother and child?" she asked Owen, her accent thick with surprise. "Miss Keller is our new housekeeper," Owen replied, helping Genevieve down from the wagon. "The arrangement is temporary." Sophia's gaze was kind but assessing as she looked Genevieve over. "You are very young to travel so far with a baby, señorita." "I'm 22, Genevieve replied, straightening her travel-worn dress. "And quite capable." Sophia nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Come inside. The little one must be hungry and you look ready to fall over." The interior of the ranch house was unexpectedly refined, polished wood floors, quality furniture, and walls adorned with paintings of Western landscapes. A large stone fireplace dominated the main room, where bookshelves lined one wall. It spoke of wealth and taste that Genevieve hadn't anticipated. "Your room is upstairs, last door on the right," Owen said, setting down her carpet bag. "It has a small adjoining chamber that was once used as a nursery. It should serve for the baby." Genevieve couldn't hide her surprise. "A nursery?" A shadow crossed Owen's face. "My brother and his wife stayed here for a time." He didn't elaborate further. "Sophia will show you around. Supper's at 6. With that, he strode out the door, leaving Genevieve with more questions than answers. Sophia touched her arm gently. "Come, I show you your room, then we feed the bébé." The bedroom was spacious and clean, with a large 4-poster bed, dresser, washstand, and a window overlooking the valley. The adjoining room was small but contained a beautifully crafted wooden cradle. It was for Senor Owen's nephew, Sophia explained quietly. But the poor child, he never used it. What happened? Genevieve asked, laying Hope gently in the cradle. Sophia crossed herself. Fever took both mother and child 3 years ago. Senor Owen's brother James could not bear to stay after. He left for California. Understanding dawned on Genevieve. The unused nursery, Owen's bitterness when she'd mentioned Providence. And Mr. Ryder, he's been alone since then. He works from sunrise until long after sunset, Sophia said. The ranch grows, the cattle multiply, but his heart. She shook her head sadly. As Genevieve unpacked her meager belongings, she wondered what she'd gotten herself into. She'd come west seeking security and a fresh start, only to find herself in the home of a man haunted by loss, with a baby that wasn't hers and winter closing in fast. Yet when Hope awoke and gazed up at her with complete trust, Genevieve felt a renewed determination. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them. They would make their way in this wild new world, one day at a time. The first week at Ryder Ranch passed in a blur of exhaustion and adjustment. Genevieve rose before dawn each morning to prepare breakfast for Owen and the ranch hands, tended to Hope, and spent her days learning the rhythms of the sprawling household. Sophia proved to be a patient teacher, showing her how to manage the large cast iron stove where supplies were kept, and which ranch hands preferred their coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in. Owen himself remained an enigma. He took his meals quickly and spoke little, leaving before sunrise and often returning after Genevieve had retired for the evening. When their paths did cross, his interactions with her were polite but distant, though she occasionally caught him watching Hope with an unreadable expression. On her 8th day at the ranch, Genevieve was hanging laundry on the line behind the house when she heard Hope crying from the basket she'd placed in the shade. Before she could reach the infant, she saw Owen approach from the corral. To her surprise, he knelt beside the basket and awkwardly lifted Hope into his large, calloused hands. "There now," he murmured, holding the baby stiffly. "What's all this fuss about?" Genevieve watched transfixed as the stern rancher attempted to comfort the crying infant. His discomfort was evident, but so was his gentleness. "She likes to be held against your shoulder," Genevieve offered, approaching them, "and sometimes a little bouncing helps." Owen followed her instructions, his movements gradually becoming more natural as Hope's cries subsided. A fleeting smile crossed his face when the baby gripped his finger. "Strong little thing, isn't she?" he commented. "Remarkably so," Genevieve agreed, taking in the unexpected tenderness in his expression. "Thank you for helping." Owen carefully returned Hope to her arms. "She's settled now. I should get back to work. The northern herd needs moving before the storm hits." "Storm?" Genevieve glanced at the clear blue sky. "Weather changes fast out here," he said, pointing to the distant horizon where dark clouds were just becoming visible. "We'll get snow by nightfall. Make sure you bring in plenty of firewood." That evening, as predicted, the temperature plummeted, and thick snowflakes began falling just as darkness descended. The wind howled around the eaves of the house as Genevieve fed Hope her evening bottle and placed her in the cradle. When she came downstairs, she found Owen building up the fire in the main room. "The men are settled in the bunkhouse," he said without turning. "Snow's coming down hard, might be our first big storm of the season. Will the cattle be all right?" Genevieve asked, wrapping her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "They know how to find shelter," Owen replied, standing and dusting off his hands. "We moved them to the protected valley this morning." He gestured to 2 cups on the side table. "I made coffee." The unexpected hospitality surprised her. "Thank you." They sat in silence for a few moments, watching the flames dance in the fireplace as the storm raged outside. Finally, Owen spoke. "You've been doing well with the work. Sophia says you're a quick learner." "I've had to be," Genevieve replied, warming her hands on the coffee cup. "My father died when I was 16. My mother and I took in laundry, did mending, whatever we could to survive." "And your mother?" She didn't object to you coming west. Genevieve stared into her cup. She passed last winter, pneumonia. Owen nodded, understanding in his eyes. So there truly was nothing left for you in Philadelphia. Just debts and memories, she confirmed. When I saw Mr. Fletcher's advertisement, it seemed like Providence. She hesitated, then added, and then hope came into my life, and I knew we both needed a fresh start. You took on a great responsibility, Owen observed. Most women would have left the child to the authorities. I couldn't, Genevieve said simply. The moment I held her, I knew I couldn't abandon her to strangers who might not love her. Owen's expression shifted, something like respect flickering in his eyes. Your Thomas Fletcher was a fortunate man, even if he never knew it. He wasn't my Thomas, Genevieve corrected gently. He was a name on paper, a possibility of security. I didn't harbor romantic notions about our arrangement. Practical, Owen remarked. That serves better out here than romance. A particularly strong gust rattled the windows, making Genevieve jump. Owen rose and added another log to the fire. Winter's harsh in Dakota Territory, he said, his back to her. Especially for those not born to it. If you find it too difficult with the baby, and all, I would understand if you wanted to return east when spring comes. The words stung more than they should have. Are you dissatisfied with my work, Mr. Ryder? He turned, surprise evident on his face. Not at all. You've exceeded expectations. His eyes met hers directly. But this isn't the life you came west for. You came to be a wife, to have your own home. Here you're just helping me maintain mine. I came west for a fresh start, Genevieve clarified, and that's what Hope and I have found. As for the rest. She set down her empty cup. I've learned that life rarely gives us exactly what we expect, but often provides what we need. Owen studied her face for a long moment before nodding slowly. Fair enough, Miss Keller. A cry from upstairs interrupted their conversation. Genevieve rose quickly. Hope needs me. Thank you for the coffee, Mr. Ryder. As she climbed the stairs, she could feel Owen's eyes following her. Something had shifted between them tonight, a small crack in the wall of formality they'd maintained. Whether that was a complication or a blessing remained to be seen. The winter storm blanketed Ryder Ranch in 3 feet of snow, transforming the landscape into a pristine white wilderness that sparkled beneath the cold Dakota sun. For 3 days, the ranch was effectively isolated, with drifts too deep for travel to town. The ranch hands focused on caring for the livestock, while Genevieve found herself spending more time in Owen's company than in all her previous days combined. To her surprise, when not consumed by work, Owen revealed himself to be well-read and thoughtful. In the evenings, after Hope was asleep, they would sit by the fire while he read aloud from Dickens or Twain, his deep voice bringing the stories to life. Occasionally, he would ask about her life in Philadelphia, listening intently to her responses, offering rare glimpses into his own past in return. She learned that he'd come west with his parents and younger brother when his father decided to try ranching after a successful career in banking. That his mother had taught him to appreciate literature before her death from tuberculosis when he was 16. That he'd fought briefly in the closing days of the Civil War, though he wouldn't speak of what he'd seen. As December arrived, bringing with it preparations for Christmas, Genevieve noticed Owen spending more time with Hope. He would hold her while Genevieve cooked, awkwardly at first, then with growing confidence. The baby seemed drawn to him, quieting at the sound of his voice, grasping at his fingers with her tiny hands. She likes you, Genevieve observed one evening as Owen walked Hope around the main room, the baby's head nestled against his shoulder. Babies aren't particularly discerning, he replied, though his expression softened as Hope cooed against his neck. On the contrary, they're excellent judges of character, Genevieve countered, setting aside her mending. Hope doesn't take to everyone so easily. Owen looked down at the infant, a hint of wonder in his eyes. She's growing so fast, getting heavier. She's thriving here, Genevieve said quietly, as am I. Owen's eyes met hers, something unspoken passing between them before he carefully handed Hope back. I should check on the horses. Storm's coming in again tonight. The next morning, Genevieve awoke to find Owen already gone, having left before dawn with 2 of his men to ride to a distant part of the ranch where some cattle had been reported straying. The day passed slowly, the house unusually quiet without his presence. Around midday, Sophia came to the kitchen where Genevieve was preparing bread dough, her expression troubled. "Ryder's coming," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "Not Senor Owen." Genevieve followed her to the window where they could see 3 men on horseback approaching the ranch house. Even from a distance, there was something menacing about them the way they rode, the rifles visible in their saddle holsters. "Who are they?" Genevieve asked, instinctively moving toward the stairs where Hope napped. "Trouble," Sophia replied grimly. "Go upstairs with the baby, lock the door. Miguel will handle them." But before Genevieve could reach the stairs, the front door burst open and a tall man with a scarred face stepped inside, followed by 2 others. The smell of whiskey and unwashed bodies filled the room. "Well now," the scarred man said, looking Genevieve up and down with an unpleasant smile. "Ryder's got himself a pretty new housekeeper." "Senor Owen is not here," Miguel announced, entering from the back door with a rifle in his hands. "State your business or leave." The scarred man raised his hands in mock surrender. Now, Miguel, we're just being neighborly. Heard Ryder got himself some new help, thought we'd introduce ourselves." His eyes never left Genevieve. "I'm Jed Harmon. My brothers and I have the spread north of here." Genevieve had heard Owen mention the Harmons troublemakers who'd moved in last year, more interested in drinking and causing problems than actual ranching. "Mr. Ryder will return soon," she said, keeping her voice steady. "You should come back then if you have business with him." Jed took a step closer, making Genevieve back up toward the stairs. "Maybe our business is with you, pretty lady." A baby's cry from upstairs made all 3 Harmons look up in surprise. "Well, I'll be damned," Jed said, grinning maliciously. "Ryder's been busy, hasn't he? Got himself a woman and a brat already." "The child is mine," Genevieve stated firmly, her heart racing. "And Mr. Ryder is my employer, nothing more." Jed laughed, a harsh sound that made Genevieve's skin crawl. "Sure he is, honey, sure he is." He turned to his brothers. "Check upstairs. See what else Ryder's hiding." Miguel raised his rifle. "You will not go upstairs. You will leave now." The situation might have escalated further had the sound of approaching horses not drawn their attention. Through the window, Genevieve could see Owen returning with his men, riding hard toward the house. Jed's expression darkened. "Looks like our visit's cut short, but we'll be back to finish our introductions." He tipped his hat mockingly at Genevieve. "Looking forward to it, madam." The Harmons left just as Owen dismounted, the 2 groups exchanging tense words in the yard before the intruders rode off. When Owen entered the house, his face was tight with anger. "Are you all right?" he asked Genevieve, scanning her for any sign of harm. "We're fine," she assured him, though her hands were still shaking. "They didn't get upstairs to Hope." Owen's jaw clenched. "This is my fault. The Harmons have been looking for ways to cause trouble since they moved in. Now they'll use you and the baby to do it." "What do you mean?" Genevieve asked. "They think you're—" Owen hesitated, his face coloring slightly. "That we're together. That Hope is my child. They'll spread that talk in town, try to damage my reputation, maybe yours worse." Genevieve felt her cheeks grow warm. "Oh. I should never have brought you here," Owen said, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I've put you both at risk." "We were at risk before we met you, Mr. Ryder," Genevieve reminded him. "At least here we have protection." Owen's expression remained troubled. "The Harmons are dangerous men. They've been suspected of rustling, maybe worse, and now they've taken an interest in you." Upstairs, Hope continued to cry. Genevieve moved toward the stairs, but Owen reached out, catching her arm gently. "Genevieve," he said, using her first name for the first time. "I promise you, I won't let anyone harm either of you." The intensity in his eyes sent an unexpected warmth through her. "I know," she replied softly. That night, after hope was settled, Genevieve found Owen on the porch, despite the bitter cold. He stood rigid, staring out at the moonlit snow, a rifle leaning against the railing beside him. "You'll freeze out here," she said, wrapping her shawl tighter around her shoulders as she joined him. "I've posted extra men around the property," he replied without turning. "The Harmons won't catch us unprepared if they come back. Do you think they will, tonight? No, they're cowards at heart, but they're the kind who'll wait for an opportunity." He finally looked at her, his expression grave in the moonlight. "I'm taking you and Hope to town tomorrow. You'll stay at the hotel until I can arrange passage east for you." Genevieve stared at him in disbelief. "You're sending us away? It's the only way to keep you safe," Owen insisted. "The Harmons have a grudge against me, not you. Once you're gone, they'll lose interest." "I'm not leaving," Genevieve stated firmly. "This is our home now." Owen's expression softened momentarily before hardening again. "It's too dangerous." "Life is dangerous, Mr. Ryder." "It was dangerous in Philadelphia, it's dangerous here. The difference is that here we have people who care what happens to us." She took a step closer to him. "Or am I mistaken about that?" The question hung between them, loaded with unspoken meaning. Owen's eyes searched her face, his own expression conflicted. "You're not mistaken," he finally admitted, his voice low. "I do care, that's why I need you to go." "And if I refuse?" "Damn it, Genevieve," Owen's voice rose slightly before he controlled it again. "You don't understand what men like the Harmons are capable of." "Then help me understand," she challenged. "Treat me as an equal, not a helpless female who needs to be shipped off at the first sign of trouble." Owen ran a hand over his face, clearly frustrated. "It's not just about the Harmons. It's about—" He trailed off, struggling for words. "About what?" "About the fact that they weren't entirely wrong," he finally said. "About what they assumed between us. Not about Hope, but about how I—" He stopped again, clearly uncomfortable with expressing his feelings. Genevieve's heart quickened. "How you what?" Owen stepped closer, close enough that she could see the conflict in his eyes, feel the warmth radiating from him despite the cold night. "How I've come to feel about you. It's not appropriate. I'm your employer." "Is that all you are?" Genevieve asked quietly, scarcely believing her own boldness. For a moment, it seemed Owen might retreat behind his wall of propriety. But then something shifted in his expression. Slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, he raised his hand to her face, his fingers barely brushing her cheek. "No," he whispered. "It's not all I want to be." The admission hung between them, fragile and momentous. Genevieve knew she should step back, maintain the proper distance between employer and employee, but her heart refused to obey. Instead, she leaned slightly into his touch, her eyes holding his. "Then don't send us away," she said softly. "Whatever dangers come, we'll face them together." Owen's thumb traced the line of her jaw, his expression torn between desire and restraint. "I can't promise it will be safe." "I'm not asking for safety," Genevieve replied. "I'm asking for a chance, for hope, for me." She hesitated, then added, "for us." The word "us" seemed to break something in Owen's resolve. With a sound that was half surrender, half yearning, he drew her closer, his free arm wrapping around her waist. For a heartbeat, he searched her face, giving her one last chance to pull away. When she didn't, he lowered his head and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but quickly deepened as months of unacknowledged attraction surged between them. Genevieve's hands found their way to his shoulders, then the nape of his neck, her fingers threading through his hair as she responded with equal fervor. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "This complicates everything," he murmured. Genevieve couldn't help but smile. The best things in life usually do. Owen's answering smile transformed his face, erasing years of solitude and worry. He started to pull her closer again when a gunshot cracked through the night, splintering the porch railing inches from where they stood. "Get down!" Owen shouted, pushing Genevieve to the porch floor and covering her body with his own as another shot rang out. "The Harmons!" she gasped, her heart racing with fear now rather than passion. "Stay here," Owen ordered, reaching for his rifle. He crawled to the edge of the porch, then called out, "Miguel, Johnson." Shots from the north ridge, more gunfire erupted as Owen's men returned fire from their positions around the property. Genevieve could hear shouting, the sound of horses galloping, more shots being exchanged. Then, terrifyingly, Hope began to wail from inside the house. Without hesitation, Genevieve pushed herself up to a crouch. "I need to get to Hope." "Genevieve, no." Owen tried to grab her, but she was already slipping through the front door, staying low as she dashed for the stairs. She reached Hope's cradle just as a bullet shattered the bedroom window, sending glass spraying across the floor. Scooping up the screaming infant, Genevieve huddled in the corner farthest from the window, shielding Hope with her body as she tried to calm her terrified cries. Moments later, heavy footsteps pounded up the stairs and Owen burst into the room, his rifle in one hand. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, kneeling beside them, his free hand moving over Genevieve's shoulder, her face checking for injuries. "We're not hit," she assured him, though her voice trembled. "Hope's just frightened." Relief flooded Owen's face before hardening into determination. "The Harmons brought friends. We've got at least 6 riders out there." He glanced toward the shattered window. "This room isn't safe. We need to get to the root cellar." Keeping low, they made their way downstairs, where Miguel and Sofia waited anxiously. Outside, gunfire continued to exchange sporadically. "Johnson and Carter are pinned down by the barn," Miguel reported grimly. "The others are trying to circle behind the attackers." Owen nodded, quickly forming a plan. "Miguel, get Sofia, Miss Keller, and the baby to the root cellar. Bar the door from inside. I'm going to help the men." "No," Genevieve caught his arm. "It's too dangerous." Owen's expression softened as he looked at her, then at Hope, who had quieted somewhat in the chaos. "I have to protect what's mine," he said quietly, his meaning clear. Then, in a swift motion that took Genevieve by surprise, he leaned down and pressed a fierce kiss to her lips. "Wait for me," he whispered before turning to Miguel. "Keep them safe." Before Genevieve could protest further, Owen was gone, slipping out the back door into the night. Miguel ushered them quickly toward the kitchen, where a trapdoor in the floor led to the root cellar beneath the house. The earthen chamber was cold but secure, its walls reinforced with timber, its single entrance easily defended. Sofia lit a lantern while Miguel barred the heavy door behind them. In the dim light, Genevieve could see shelves lined with preserved food enough to last weeks if necessary. Above them, the sounds of battle continued: gunshots, shouts, the occasional crash. Genevieve paced the small space, hope clutched to her chest, her mind filled with terrible images of Owen lying wounded or worse. "Senor Owen is a skilled fighter," Sofia said gently, seeing her distress. "He was a cavalry scout in the war. He knows how to survive." "The Harmons came because of me," Genevieve whispered, guilt weighing heavy on her heart, "because they thought Owen and I." "They came because they are bad men who want what is not theirs," Miguel corrected firmly. "They have tried before to intimidate Senor Owen, to force him to sell his water rights. You are just their newest excuse." An hour passed, then another. Hope eventually fell asleep, exhausted from crying. The gunfire above had ceased, but Genevieve didn't know if that was cause for relief or greater fear. When a heavy knock came at the cellar door, she nearly jumped out of her skin. "Miguel, Sofia," Owen's voice called. "It's over." Miguel removed the bar and Owen descended the ladder, his face smudged with dirt and gunpowder, a bloody gash on his forehead but otherwise intact. Genevieve felt weak with relief. "The Harmons?" Miguel asked. "Two dead. Jed and the others fled, but they won't get far," Owen replied grimly. "I've sent riders to the marshal in Bismarck. They'll be waiting when the Harmons try to return to their ranch." His eyes sought Genevieve. "Are you all right?" she nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Owen crossed to her in 3 strides, wrapping his arms around both her and the sleeping Hope, holding them tightly against his chest. "I thought I might lose you," he murmured into her hair. "Both of you, you didn't," she whispered back. "We're here." Owen pulled back just enough to look at Hope, his expression softening as he gazed at the sleeping infant. She slept through a gunfight. She's going to be a true Westerner. The words made Genevieve's heart swell with unexpected hope. Does that mean you're not sending us away? Owen's eyes met hers, serious and determined. I'm never letting either of you go, he said firmly, if you'll stay. We'll stay, Genevieve promised, her voice barely audible, for as long as you want us. Then prepare for a very long stay, Owen replied, a smile finally breaking through his exhaustion, because I plan to want you both for the rest of my life. The attack by the Harmons changed everything at Ryder Ranch. Word of the incident spread quickly throughout the territory, and within days, U.S. Marshal James Buchanan arrived from Bismarck with a posse to apprehend the remaining Harmon brothers. They were caught trying to flee across the Montana border and brought back to stand trial for murder, attempted murder, and a litany of other crimes that had plagued the region for months. Evidence found at their ranch implicated them in cattle rustling operations that had targeted several ranches in the territory, not just Owen's. The trial was swift. The sentencing harsh. Jed Harmon and his surviving brother were sentenced to 20 years in the territorial prison. For Genevieve and Owen, the aftermath of the attack brought a different kind of reckoning. The pretense of employer and employee could no longer be maintained, not after what had passed between them on that fateful night. Yet the complexities of their situation, her status as a mail-order bride contracted to another man, the baby that wasn't hers by birth, the gossip that would inevitably follow required careful navigation. It was Sophia who provided the solution in her practical, no-nonsense way. You love her, she said bluntly to Owen one morning as they watched Genevieve hanging laundry in the yard, Hope babbling happily in a basket beside her. And she loves you. The rest is just details. Owen couldn't deny it, though the admission still felt new and vulnerable on his tongue. It's not that simple, Sophia. Life is never simple, Senor, Sophia replied with the wisdom of her 60 years. But love is rare. When you find it, you fight for it. That evening, after Hope was asleep, Owen asked Genevieve to join him by the fire. Winter still held the Dakota Territory in its grip, though the lengthening days promised spring's eventual arrival. Outside, stars pierced the clear night sky, and inside, the crackling fire cast a warm glow over the main room. I spoke with Reverend Tillman in Bismarck today, Owen began, his usually confident voice tinged with nervousness. About our situation. Genevieve set aside her mending, her heart quickening. Our situation, about how to properly. Owen cleared his throat. That is, what would be the appropriate way to? He stopped, clearly frustrated with his own uncharacteristic inability to speak plainly. A small smile played at the corners of Genevieve's mouth. Are you trying to propose, Mr. Ryder? The directness of her question broke the tension, and Owen laughed softly. I'm making a poor job of it, aren't I? Perhaps, Genevieve agreed, her eyes twinkling, but I find I'm quite fond of your efforts nonetheless. Owen moved from his chair to kneel before her, taking her hands in his. Genevieve Keller, I never expected to find love again. After my brother's tragedy, I thought that part of me was finished. His thumbs traced circles on her palms. Then you arrived with Hope, turning my orderly life upside down, and I found myself caring in ways I'd forgotten were possible. Genevieve's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Owen, let me finish, he said gently. I know this isn't what you came west for. You came to marry a shopkeeper and have a comfortable life in town. Instead, you found a ranch, danger, and a man who spent years trying not to feel anything. I came west for a home, Genevieve corrected softly, and I found one, with you. Owen raised one hand to cup her cheek. Then make it official. Marry me, Genevieve. Be my wife. Let me be Hope's father in every way that matters. Let us be a family, the family none of us expected, but all of us need. A tear slipped down Genevieve's cheek as she nodded. Yes, she whispered. Yes to all of it. Owen's face broke into the rare, full smile that transformed him from the stern rancher into the man Genevieve had come to love. He pulled her gently from her chair into his arms, sealing their promise with a kiss that spoke of belonging, of homecoming, of a future neither had dared imagine months before. When they finally parted, Owen reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. "This was my mother's," he said, opening it to reveal a delicate gold band set with a single pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. "I've kept it all these years, waiting for the right woman to wear it." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Genevieve marveled at how perfectly it fit, as if it had been made for her all along. "Reverend Tillman can marry us next Sunday," Owen continued, his fingers intertwining with hers. "He said there's no impediment since Thomas. Since your prior arrangement was never formalized." "Sunday," Genevieve repeated, hardly able to believe how quickly her life had changed. "That hardly gives us time to prepare." "We can wait longer if you prefer," Owen offered immediately. "Have a proper wedding with all the trimmings." Genevieve shook her head, smiling. "Sunday is perfect. I don't need trimmings or finery, I just need you and hope, and this place we've made our home." The wedding was simple but heartfelt, held in the small church in Bismarck with only a few guests in attendance, Sophia and Miguel, the ranch hands who had fought alongside Owen against the Harmons, and Reverend Tillman's wife, who cooed over hope throughout the ceremony. Genevieve wore her best dress, a dark blue wool that Sophia had helped alter to look more festive with the addition of lace at the collar and cuffs. Owen wore a new black suit that made him look so handsome Genevieve could scarcely take her eyes off him as they exchanged their vows. "I, Owen James Ryder, take you, Genevieve Marie Keller, to be my lawfully wedded wife," he promised, his voice steady and sure. "To have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do us part." When Genevieve repeated the vows, her voice trembled slightly with emotion, but her eyes never left Owen's. "I, Genevieve Marie Keller, take you, Owen James Ryder, to be my lawfully wedded husband. To have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do us part." After the exchange of rings, Owen's father's gold band, joining Genevieve's pearl, set one, Reverend Tillman smiled broadly and declared, "By the authority vested in me by God and the territory of Dakota, I now pronounce you husband and wife." With a wink at Owen, he added, "You may kiss your bride." Owen didn't need to be told twice. Pulling Genevieve gently into his arms, he kissed her with a tenderness that made her feel cherished, and a passion that promised much more to come. The small gathering erupted in cheers and applause, with Sophia dabbing at her eyes and Miguel beaming proudly. Even Hope, nestled in Sophia's arms, seemed to sense the importance of the occasion, gurgling happily and reaching toward her newly official parents. After a celebratory meal at Bismarck's finest restaurant, Owen surprised Genevieve by taking her to the town's small hotel rather than immediately returning to the ranch. "Sophia and Miguel will look after Hope tonight," he explained as he carried her over the threshold of the hotel's best room. "I wanted one night just for us, before we return to the ranch and all its demands." Genevieve's cheeks flushed as she took in the room's romantic touches: fresh flowers on the dresser, a bottle of champagne chilling in a bucket of ice, the large bed turned down invitingly. "You've thought of everything," she said softly. "I've had months to think about our wedding night," Owen admitted, his voice dropping to a low register that sent shivers up Genevieve's spine. "Since the moment you stepped off that stagecoach with Hope in your arms, looking so brave and determined, I've been fighting thoughts that weren't at all appropriate for an employer." Genevieve stepped closer, her hands coming to rest on his chest. "And now, as my husband." Owen's eyes darkened with desire. Now those thoughts are not only appropriate but encouraged. His hands settled at her waist, drawing her closer. "Mrs. Ryder." The name sent a thrill through Genevieve. "Mrs. Ryder," she echoed, savoring the sound of it. "I like how that sounds." "So do I," Owen murmured, before claiming her lips in a kiss that quickly deepened, months of restrained passion finally finding release. Their wedding night was everything Genevieve had secretly hoped for, tender and passionate by turns, with Owen proving to be as considerate and attentive a lover as he was a partner in all other aspects of their life together. By morning, any lingering awkwardness between them had vanished, replaced by an intimacy that felt both new and somehow familiar, as if their souls had recognized each other long before their bodies joined. When they returned to the ranch the next day, they found Sophia and Miguel had organized a surprise, the main house decorated with early spring wildflowers, a special meal prepared, and even the ranch hands dressed in their Sunday best to welcome the newlyweds home. Hope, wearing a new dress Sophia had sewn, seemed to have grown overnight, her smile wider than ever as Genevieve lifted her into her arms. "There's one more thing," Owen said as the celebrations wound down, taking Genevieve's hand and leading her toward his study, a room she'd rarely entered during her time as housekeeper. Inside, he withdrew a document from his desk drawer and handed it to her. "I had this drawn up in Bismarck yesterday." Genevieve looked down at the paper, her eyes widening as she read the title, "Petition for Adoption." "Owen," she questioned, hardly daring to hope. "Hope should have our name officially," Owen explained, his voice thick with emotion. "The lawyer says it should be straightforward since no one has claimed her. Once approved, she'll legally be Hope Ryder, our daughter in every way that matters." Tears filled Genevieve's eyes as the full meaning of his gesture sank in. This man, who had lost so much, who had hardened his heart against further pain, was now embracing not only her but a child who had no blood connection to either of them, claiming them both, just as he'd promised that first day in Bismarck. "You're an extraordinary man, Owen Ryder," she whispered, rising on tiptoes to kiss him softly. "Hope and I are the luckiest females in the Dakota Territory." Owen's arms encircled her waist, drawing her close. "I'm the lucky one," he countered. "I was existing, not living, before you two arrived. Now I have a purpose beyond just building a bigger ranch or running more cattle. I have a family to love, to protect, to build a future for." From the doorway came a discreet cough. They turned to find Sophia holding Hope, who was reaching for them, clearly unwilling to be left out of the moment. "Someone wants her mama and papa," Sophia said with a knowing smile. Owen reached for Hope, settling her comfortably in one arm while keeping the other around Genevieve's waist. As the baby patted his face with her small hands, gurgling happily, Genevieve was struck by how natural they looked together, how quickly Owen had transitioned from reluctant employer to devoted husband and father. "Papa," Owen repeated, testing the word. "I like the sound of that almost as much as husband." Genevieve leaned her head against his shoulder, her heart full to bursting. "They both suit you perfectly." Spring came to Dakota Territory in fits, and starts that year, warm days followed by late snowstorms, tender green shoots appearing even as icy winds still howled down from the north. By May, however, the transformation was complete. The ranch lands turned emerald green, dotted with wildflowers, the cattle growing fat on the lush grass, and the days lengthening into the long, productive hours of the northern summer. Hope, too, blossomed with the spring. By her first birthday in July, a date Owen and Genevieve had chosen based on the doctor's estimate of her age, she was taking her first tentative steps, toddling between them with expressions of determination and delight that made Genevieve's heart swell with pride. The adoption was finalized in June, making official what they had known in their hearts since winter: they were a family, bound by love if not by blood. To celebrate, Owen had surprised them with a trip to Bismarck, where a photographer captured their first formal portrait. Hope seated on Genevieve's lap, Owen standing proudly beside them, his hand resting on his wife's shoulder. When the photograph was delivered to the ranch, framed in silver, Owen placed it prominently in the main room. "The first of many," he promised, already planning to document their family's growth through the years, and grow it did. By the autumn of that first year of marriage, Genevieve discovered she was expecting their second child, news that brought tears of joy to Owen's eyes when she told him. "Are you happy?" she asked as they lay in bed that night, his hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. "Beyond words," Owen replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I never imagined I could be this content, this fulfilled," he chuckled softly. "Though I should warn you, ranchers' sons are notoriously rambunctious. If it's a boy, we'll have our hands full." Genevieve smiled in the darkness. "And what makes you so certain it's a boy?" "Just a feeling," Owen murmured, pulling her closer. "But boy or girl, as long as the baby is healthy and you're well, I'll be the happiest man in Dakota Territory." In April of the following year, Genevieve gave birth to a son they named James Thomas Ryder, James after Owen's brother, and Thomas in a nod to the man whose death had inadvertently brought them together. Hope, now nearly 2, regarded her new brother with curious fascination, gently patting his downy head under Owen's watchful supervision. "Careful with baby," she said solemnly, already protective of her younger sibling. As their family grew, so did the ranch. With Owen's careful management and the region's increasing prosperity, Ryder Ranch expanded its operations, adding more land, more cattle, and eventually branching into horse breeding, a passion Owen had always harbored but never fully pursued until Genevieve encouraged him to follow his dreams. They faced challenges, of course. The Dakota winters remained brutal, testing their endurance. Drought struck in their 3rd year of marriage, forcing difficult decisions about herd management. And not all the territory's troublemakers had been eliminated with the Harmons' imprisonment. Rustlers and outlaws remained an occasional threat that required vigilance. But through it all, the foundation they had built that first winter of trust, partnership, and abiding love sustained them. Each difficulty faced together only strengthened the bond between them, turning what had begun as an unexpected arrangement into an unbreakable union. 5 years after their marriage, on a warm summer evening as they sat on the porch watching Hope, now 6, teaching her 3-year-old brother to catch fireflies in the twilight, Owen took Genevieve's hand, his thumb brushing over the pearl ring that never left her finger. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Thomas Fletcher hadn't died?" he asked quietly. "If you'd arrived in Bismarck to find him waiting instead of me?" Genevieve considered the question, watching their children's laughter as they chased the glowing insects across the yard. Her free hand rested on the gentle swell of her abdomen, where their 3rd child, another son, she suspected, though she hadn't told Owen yet, grew steadily. "I used to," she admitted, "in those first uncertain days, but now." She turned to meet his gaze, the love she felt for this man still taking her breath away after all these years. "Now I know it couldn't have happened any other way. We were meant to find each other, Owen. You, me, and Hope. Everything aligned perfectly to bring us together." Owen lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a tender kiss to her knuckles. "The mail-order bride who carried a baby no one claimed, and the foolish cowboy who said claim them both," he murmured, echoing the words he'd spoken that first day in Bismarck. "Best decision I ever made." "For all of us," Genevieve agreed, leaning against his shoulder as their children's laughter drifted up from the yard, a sound more precious than any she could have imagined when she'd stepped off that stagecoach years ago alone, afraid, but determined to find a home. And find it she had, in the most unexpected of places. In the arms of a rancher who'd learned to love again, in the smile of a child who belonged to them both in all the ways that truly mattered, and in the life they'd built together on the wild Dakota plains. It wasn't the future she'd planned when she'd left Philadelphia as a mail-order bride. But as Genevieve Ryder watched her husband lift their laughing children into his strong arms, she knew with absolute certainty it was better than anything she could have possibly imagined.